Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show, Stories and Prayer. Let's talk tonight about some aliens. I was just reviewing this man right here uh, from Gaia. I can't remember his name. He's describing a craft and he's talking about the technology they used to fly. And some of the things I disagree with him on because, dun dun dun, I flew a saucer. Yes, I had a visit when I was 6 years old in 1970, and I just remembered it in 2018. 48 years, I forgot about it. Suddenly started having flashbacks. I went to a regression therapist, and I remembered sitting in a craft, flying it, just like the picture in the thumbnail, with three grays, one standing on my right side, the other two standing on my left. Grok got that backwards. I meant my right, not stage right or stage left. Well, my right would be stage right, but the Grok got it from the perspective of looking at the photo. But I was flying telepathically with my hands on this desk-shaped panel that had symbols on it. I want to show you really quick. I interviewed my mother about it because she was there, and we talked about it. And here's a little bit from our interview. 6.5 years old, and they were just a little bit taller than me, which would go with about the size of the craft. Anyway, so go back to what you were doing in bed. So there's beings out in the front yard. Did you just get up and go look?
I'm wondering what the heck they're doing there. Are they a danger? Were you out in the yard there already?
No, but I have a vague recollection that I was already awake in my room doing the same thing, looking out the window at them. So I think, anyway, you go ahead.
Well, I just remember I got to get out there so I can monitor what's happening.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because I didn't know if they had called you out there or what had gone on.
What about, I won't say her name, what about my sister who was there? Was she involved or was she?
Nobody was involved except just you and I.
Okay, that's right. For me. So the first recollection I had of this memory when I first told you about the dream was I remember you coming into my bedroom and saying, "Come here, I want you to meet somebody."
I don't even remember.
Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
But I'm thinking now, I'm having a vague, it's like when you try to remember a dream when you just woke up and 15 minutes later you can't remember what you were dreaming about, but you have a vague recollection of what it was, maybe a scene. Same thing. It's like the movie The Hangover. I kind of remember looking out my window and seeing the craft and some beings. There might have been one right at my window looking at me right through the window where that bush is.
And as a parent, I look back and think, why didn't you go to your dad and tell him? And that's when he worked for a company in the north.
Mm-hmm.
And went out of town and had meetings in that state.
Is that Ohio? He worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah.
He told me that right before he passed away.
Huh.
I said, "You worked at Wright-Pat?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "What did you work on?" He said, "I don't remember." But that's where the UFOs are. That's where they took the aliens, allegedly from Roswell to Wright-Patterson. And that's the company that Dad worked for was in a town right next to that Air Force Base.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of history coming out. Yeah, so that's when I interviewed my sweet mother. She just passed in 21 from complications from 3 jabs in her arm. She had already beat the COVID virus, without having any immunizations. Her immune system was super strong. And then she was in this living complex for the elderly, and they mandatorily injected the people who lived there. And I was against it, but my sister, who had power of attorney, allowed them to do it. And her lung tissue swelled, and I told her that's exactly what would happen. And my sister told me, "Oh, shut up. It can only help. It's not going to hurt." And I said, "Look, they can only hurt, and they can't help." And she let them do it anyway. So the aliens, this is the window. Can you see it from my perspective there? Yeah. I think I'm covering it. Let me turn it myself. For this video, I'll put myself down here. This is the house. And I think the cursor is the bigger one that I'm using. That was the window of mine. We had a big, long rancher style house, what they call here. It's a single story, pretty wide, 4-bedroom. I think it had 1, 2, 3, 3.5 bath, long. We had a big U-shaped driveway. But over here in this grassy area on the side of the house, that was on the east side of the house. So one day, I was tying my shoes. This was in 2018 or so. I'm pretty sure it was 2018. I got up and I turned and put my feet on the floor, and suddenly it just had this flashback of these there were 5 gray aliens standing outside of my window. And hold on, let me get some coffee. And they were standing there. But actually, before I went to the window, they called me to the window. The first memory I have, I was on the floor. We had this nasty green, dark. Back in the 70s, the colors of everything were marigold, brown, and green. And that seemed to be the color of choice for all of the interior design at the time. If you look back at the 70s, you can see that everything was brown, gold, and green. And we had this dark, I think it was called deep forest green carpet. It wasn't shag, but it was kind of matted, but it had pattern clumps. I don't even know what you call that carpet if they have it anymore. I don't like carpet in a house. So I'm on the floor, and I remember I had my stuffed donkey that I really liked. And for some reason, I had the only stuffed animal I had that I remembered is this stuffed donkey. And I remember it had a little hole in its neck, stitching, and these little white beads of foam would come out. And I had my mother sew it up, so she fixed Donkey. And that was the name of it. It was just Donkey. So I'm playing with Donkey, and I had another, like a Tonka truck. I used to play with Tonka trucks that had these little miniatures. And I remember it was around midnight, but I was a night owl even then. And it's already, and I was 6 years old. This was in Houston, south of Houston, between, let's say, downtown, between Hobby Airport and Ellington Field, where the Johnson Space Center is. We lived close by. My father worked for a company that was in Dayton, Ohio, and he was a vibration analysis specialist. I don't know if this experience had anything to do with him. I suspect one of the things that could have happened is maybe they knew about me because of my father, or this could have been just about me and my spirit and something I was or did in a previous life, or knew them. My regression therapist was throwing out all kinds of ideas to try to find out how they knew me and why they came. So anyway, I'm playing on the carpet, and I don't remember the dialogue, what it was, but it was, come to the window and talk to us. And I got up and I walked to the window, and there were these 5 typical grays there. They had the long arms. They had bigger black eyes, but they weren't as menacing, and they seemed to have had like um, seems to me like they had almost human looking eyes, but they were just very large and bulbous, but their heads were round and enlarged, just like everybody sketches, but they were not the scary kind, and they had a suit on, but they were barefoot. You know what scared me was their feet. They had these long, bony feet, these four-toed feet. And when I first looked down, their faces didn't scare me. They just kind of looked like odd-looking children about my size. And until I looked down at their feet, and that's when I realized that these were creatures of some type. And I got really scared. I can remember the fear where I froze. And this took me a while to figure this out in the last 7 years. What they did was they changed the perspective of what I was looking at their feet to be black shoes on. So suddenly they all had these black shoes on, but they were clown shoes. They had big, round, bulbous toes, and they were funny looking. And I remember looking at that. And so they reacted to what I was scared of and covered their feet. I don't know how they did that. But because I kept asking, I was asking my mother if they were barefoot or not. Let's listen some more to what she was saying. So, anyway, so go ahead. So you were wondering why I didn't go to Dad?
Well, I knew he wasn't there. I knew why you didn't go. You had good sense.
Yeah.
You just don't get things worked up.
Do you know, in my lifetime, I've always had a paranoia of looking out a window at night because I don't want to see the face of an alien.
Not until we started talking about this.
I mean, guys, maybe some of you, I don't like to be around windows at night because I don't want to look out because I think there's going to be an alien looking right back at me. And yeah. And now I'm wondering if that's not what happened at this house, right? Because it's a super vague recollection. I think it was standing maybe 10, 12 feet from the window, just right there. And that's a tall vertical window that goes low. It's an upright window. It's like a full body window. So did you get up and go out in the yard? Or did you? You were by yourself. You weren't with me. According to what I remember, if you came in my room and you said, "Come with me, I want you to meet someone," maybe you came straight from the bedroom telepathically and you knew what to do.
Are you saying you went in your sister's room?
No, nothing to do with her. It was just, I was in my bed. I don't think I was asleep there. I might have just run and jumped back in my bed if I heard you coming. And so when you walked in, I already knew you were coming, and I got up.
You did that a lot, didn't you?
Didn't I? Kids are still up playing in the room. Mom's coming, they go lay in bed. But I'm just wondering if I saw you maybe out in the yard with them, and then they sent you back in the house.
Well, I was in the yard at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember going out the front door to get there. I don't know how I got to the front yard.
Without me, this is by yourself. This is an
Mhm.
experience you had by yourself.
Well, yeah, trying to figure out what the heck's going on out in my yard.
Because you asked me, you said when I went outside, you said, were they standing in the yard like this, and you had your hands on your waist, like your fists on your waist, like a coach, and with the whistle. And I said, no, I didn't see that. When I went out in the yard, I saw the craft. The kind of like a doorway was open. There was like a ramp.
Yeah.
It wasn't stairs. It was a ramp, and it was. But they were inside. I don't remember ever any of them in the yard, but you do.
Now I
And
do.
now I vaguely remember one standing in front of my window.
There were 5.
So somehow, what I want to know is how did they know to come to my yard and come get me? It was either somebody we knew working at NASA, or my father, or for some other reason I can't even imagine.
Yeah, your father could still be working at Wright Patterson.
At that time,
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
I just found out it was in 2015. We were sitting outside his place at a picnic table, and
10
he
years.
said he worked at Wright-Patterson right after he got out of the Air Force. He was in the Korean War.
What year?
Oh, I don't even remember. And I remember I already knew a lot about UFOs and aliens and Wright-Patterson in Ohio and the town of Dayton. And when he said he worked there, I went, "Really?" I said, "What'd you do?" And he was having a lot of trouble with his memory, but he'd had cancer for 10 years already. But he could not remember for the life of him. He was just like, "I can't remember what I did there." But this is getting stranger as we talk more. But so you were out there by yourself without me before you came back in?
I suspect I was.
You suspect? I almost have a vague recollection of seeing you in a gown walking that way from my window.
Yeah. She walked right over there to
You
the
might have even
saucers.
known I was looking out the window, and you can't remember.
That sounds familiar.
Does it?
I would have done that to prepare you to not be frightened.
Yeah. I look back, this was a friendly encounter. I don't remember, you hear a lot of people when they discuss alien abductions or encounters with aliens, they were pulled out of their bed and levitated through the ceiling into a craft, and then they were poked and prodded and sexually abused or some torture, needles going into the uterus or the eyeballs or whatever. There was none of that. There was no operations going on or any trauma. It was a friendly visit. Did you get any idea that it was negative?
The sign that we says that we hear it in movies and TVs is this do no harm.
Right.
The prime
That's
directive.
the big sign on our foreheads. Do no harm.
Yeah. Do not harm me. So we went out in the yard. Well, what I remember is what I first started to recall a few years ago was you came into my room and you said,
Come see this.
"Come with me. I want you to meet someone." And like you said, you might have been thinking of a way to introduce me without being frightened. But I think I get the idea that I already knew who I was going to see because I'd already seen them.
Yeah. I watched her fly
And
off.
so I was excited to
Look
take
in the
her.
movie, in the window.
I can't see their faces. It's like their faces are blurred out.
Yeah.
But I think you saw their faces. Maybe they read your mind that I was going to be frightened and they hid their faces. So what did we do? I remember going down the hall with you, holding your hand. We went up through the porch, out the front door. We turned right and we started walking towards that side yard, just right by that street light post.
Out by the street.
And they were up by the street, by the ditch.
That's by the neighbor's, that's by their driveway.
Right.
That's the
Yeah, I
neighbor's
took this
driveway.
picture in front of the neighbor's driveway. This is
There were
still
two
incredible.
saucers.
We're talking about this and we're filling in all each other's details of a dream. So,
You know what? This is incredible because my mother and I, we sat down a few times and talked about this. The first time I mentioned it to her was in 2018. I kept forgetting, and I would go to her house and I would cook for her. And she was bedridden with arthritis in her hip for a while before she went into a nursing home. And I would go over there and cook, bring it up to her, and she would watch Hallmark movies. It seems like those Hallmark movies, they all have the same plot. It's a romance, some handsome guy moves into town and the prettiest young woman in her 30s is in the town, single and available, and they meet each other and they don't even know they're going to fall in love, and then they fall in love. But then maybe there's a twist in the plot where she thinks he did something that he didn't do, but it's an accident. That she thinks that way because she saw something else that wasn't what she thought it was. And anyway, so I said, oh, Mom, stop, pause the movie. And she paused it and she goes, "What?" And I said, "Did I ever talk about aliens when I was a kid, that they visited me and they were friendly?" And she thought for a minute and she looked back and she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah, they were out in the east yard." And I just went, what? Oh my God, Mom. So it did happen. And I was getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps now. I remember that. And she goes, oh, you were there too. But I think I forgot about all of this because she made me forget about it, because she forbade us from talking about it ever. We never talked about it. And I think I just let it go, or I changed it into another story in my mind. And I actually wrote a book. And the theme of the book is really similar to that. And it's really odd. It's called Jake and the Jungle Gems, GEMS. So, Mom. So the rest of the story, what happened that night was I was playing with the toys. They called me to the window telepathically. Typical grays with suits on. You know, I don't remember if it was a V-neck or a rounded crew neck, but they were asking me to go with them, and there were 5 of them. It was 5 or 6. It was a group of them. It wasn't just one. Some of the things I'm talking about with her have since been changed because I've remembered more, and I've had regression therapy since this interview with my mom. But I said, no, I'm not going to come with you without my mom. So they went and they woke up my mother, but she does not remember how she got to the front yard. If you're in here, give me a hoot on the chat. And mention if you want me to talk about something, or if I skip a spot and you want to hear something else, let me know in the chat. So I'm doing this kind of in the wee hours. I just started at 1:30 a.m. Central Standard Time or later. But it's always easy to live stream and just talk about this. I'll come back and do this in like a part 2 series and talk about it more in depth, get some more information, some more pictures. But for right now, I just wanted to show you the interview that I did with my mother. And you can see how she is. Do you get an idea for her personality? She was just like, hey, what are you doing in my front yard? What do you want with my son? What are you going to do with him? You want him to go with you? Where are you wanting to go? And she left. And I remember now, there were 2 saucers there. I did not know that until I walked into the front yard, but I'll get to that part. But I went out. I'm sorry, I'm looking out my window, and when she walked by, she gave me the, wait a minute, wait for me, I'll be back, sign with the hand, I'll be back. She mouthed, and she walked over to the saucer, she got in it, and it started up with these bright colors underneath it. It's like it only flashed these colors for maybe 5 seconds, and then it was gone. It seemed to have gone straight up. But it was the colors were like, I see green and pink and blue and green and all of the colors of the, what I call the energy spectrum, like the chakra energy spectrum. You know, the 7 chakras that you have. Goes from red, what is it? Red, green, blue. What am I getting ahead? It's already, what is, orange is belly. The throat is purple. I forget all the colors. Or is the orange the heart? But anyway, that whole spectrum of energy that makes up your toroidal, what some people call the aura, is actually your 3-dimensional electrical dielectric torus field. And that's what generates at a specific frequency and density. And probably with parallel frequencies or multiple frequencies that tend to link with each other in a wave sequence that produces the pixels in which we appear. And here we are. And things are solid around us. And we can touch and feel. And we have 5 senses within the range. But just think, if the vibration turned off, we would all just poof, disappear. Just like you turn off the screen. And that's what I remember from when I saw that saucer take off. It just, the colors all flashed around. They were kind of, it wasn't like spinning colors, but they were flashing in a sequence that made it seem like the pulse was going around. But you could tell it was spooling up to do something. And then, and I waited and I waited. And I think I got my, I went back to the floor and pushed my truck around a little bit and tried to distract myself for a while. And then I might have even, I think I got back in bed because when my mother came back, I was in my bed and she came in and said, no, I watched her go back into the house. I just had a flashback of that. She was closer to the window when she walked by it. And she came and said, come with me. I want you to meet somebody. I don't know the exact wording, but she wanted to introduce me to someone whom she had just met. So we walk out the front door and into the front yard. And here's the front door of the house. And this is in the middle of the U-shaped driveway. And we walked between the top of the U-shaped driveway and the bushes over to the craft, which were parked right here, kind of by where this light pole is. There was no light pole back then. The other craft was deeper, further back in the yard. That's why I did not see it from my window. But when I came out, the leader alien was standing there by the craft. I remember now, and there was a ramp and a door. But from my perspective, looking at the ship and him, he was on the right side of the ramp, and he did have his hand on his hip with the top of his hand on the hip. You know how like you do, like when you are kind of leaning or a bad posture, you might put your hand on your hip, but your hand is backwards with your fingers pointing backwards down along your backside with your palm up. Yeah, aliens stand there like that. And it was my turn, and she was holding me with her right hand, walking toward the ramp, and she was on the left side. And then she just went like this and let go of my hand, and I went inside, and she stayed on the grass. But I wasn't scared. And I walked in, I turned to the right. This was an all silver craft. It was about, I would say, maybe 33 feet in diameter. That's what I've heard a lot of people say. I'll say 32 feet in diameter. So I don't use the number 33 and throw people off and they'll go, he said 33. Let's say it was about 31 and a half feet in diameter. In my mind as a kid, I remember it being longer than our station wagon. Put it that way. It was much longer than a station wagon. A big Ford, or no, we used Chevy. We had a Chevy Impala wagon. It was pretty cool. It was white with red leather, not red vinyl interior. Nice colors. But it was bigger than that. So and everything was smooth. It was the typical saucer shape, but everything was smooth. You did not see any bumps or seams or anything on the outside of it. It was just the smooth saucer surface. But when I went inside, my first memories back in 2018, 2019 was that I went in, I turned right, and they were showing me things on screens, but they were like flat screens before they had been invented. Then I had regression therapy once, and the regression therapist was actually to get me to remember being inside the ship. And now I know that those were not screens. We were actually looking at places that we'd flown to. You have to remember, there's no inertia on these craft, you know, when they take off. Like if you're on a train and you've ever sat, or if you've ever ridden the metro in a city, you know, when it takes off and your body goes this way, or when it stops, you know, that's inertia. Like when the train takes off, you go, if you're sitting with your back against the sidewalk, and then when it slows down, you go like that. There was none of that. I did not feel that thing move. It was just sitting in my front yard. And yet I remember being taken over to the seat, and I sat in the middle. And this is where the regression therapist had me, where I remembered, wow, I was sitting in that seat with my hands on a panel. And the one was on my right. And he was the one telepathically guiding me. And he was pointing with his left hand at these symbols that were going down the right side of the panel. Yeah. And they were symbols that made sense in a way. I couldn't read them. They were like hieroglyphic types without too many lines, without complicated stuff. They would be like a line and two dots, or a line crossing a line, or the symbol for the spooling of the generator, the fuel generator, was kind of obvious. It was like there was an animation of the spool spinning so that you could see, I guess you would know when the ship was ready to fold space. Because that's really what it does. It's hard to describe. What we see them physically take off, where they go and then they make these unreasonable turns that people estimate the G forces inside would just pulverize you into oblivion. But there's no inertia because they're not really traveling that distance physically, and the hull of the ship is not going to heat up. I wanted to show you this guy. I've seen him before. I forget his name. He was on the Gaia, and this guy. Oh, what was his name? But he's talking, I think, about inertia and the ship heating up.
With your own gravitational field, I just believe that they can do an unlimited amount of speed because you're not in this 3D. You have created this ionosphere around you. So everyone in the craft can do 1,000 miles an hour, make a right-hand turn, and they don't know or feel anything because they're like barely in this dimension.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole situation is that they're in a world all to themselves.
No.
Because they have that atmosphere, and they're not feeling the G forces that are being exerted. And also, you got to understand that there's something special about the craft too, because when the craft is going through these gyrations of speed, two things happen. One, they're supposed to be displacing the air around them, where it goes over the craft, collapse, making a loud sonic boom behind the craft. This isn't happening. I don't know why. There's no explanation for that. Also, when a craft is going that fast, it generates a lot of heat on that aircraft.
No.
Yet, the aircraft is not disintegrating in flight. And we're not talking 2,000 miles an hour. We're talking speeds maybe up to 6,000 miles an hour.
I would agree. In the atmosphere. That's the secret, what he just said. It was saying, I don't agree with this guy. This is what got me to pick the topic tonight and jump over to my story, because for him to be an expert, and he's on Gaia, he doesn't seem to know any details about it scientifically. He's just kind of guessing or conjecturing, depending on maybe some other talks he's heard. Maybe he saw some things on work he worked on projects, but I don't think he understands the force field that goes around the craft to where you actually slip out of this atmosphere that he's calling it. The dimensions that we live in, let's say the time that we live in with the clock speeds, with the speed that the sun's going over the earth, and our five senses and everything that we see as reality and solid. Like this desk of mine's not really solid. I'm just able to hit it because the gluons and quarks and everything are all moving fast enough to appear solid. Have you ever slid down the stairs with your socks on? You go, you slide down it like a ramp. Well, it's not a ramp, it's got steps, but you're just going faster and you're just getting the tips. Just the tips. But when he says the hull would heat up, but it doesn't. And when I was I'll go back to my experience, it did not have any inertia. I thought my mother was right there and the door was open and she was standing in the yard waiting for me, and I did not have any fear, although I did not go over and go back and look. Then I remembered in the hypnotic regression session that I had, It took it was like 3 hours. The therapist kept talking about things that I did not believe. She was very new agey. And I'm kind of recently ex-Christian. I've moved on where I'm cross-free Christian. I don't believe that he died in Israel. And I don't believe that he was a sacrifice and we have to drink his blood and eat his flesh and that kind of stuff. I've kind of dropped that part off, but I still know there's a Lord in heaven that created this earth that's watching over us and watching me right now. But why did I jump to religion? Help me now. Let's see who's in the chat. No one yet. Let's look at how many smarty pants we have in here. Okay, not yet. This is episode 28, people. Been doing this for about a month now. Just go on and I tell stories and have a prayer. It's going to be, and I live stream. I'm not a foul mouth. I don't cuss automatically, so I don't have to worry about that. I know a lot of people that worry like, gee, wow, what if I say something, And I don't get political. I'm not right or left. I know it's all the same coin. Back to my experience, I found out after the regression session that I was sitting in the middle in a seat, and there was an alien on my right, and the other two, he was the leader. One of them was the leader that was saying everything. Oh, and when I walked out the front door of the house with my mom, we looked over to the right to where this field was. Beside the house, that was the east yard. When my mother said when I asked her about that as a kid, she goes, yeah, they were out in the east yard. There was, like I already told you, there was a saucer up front and a saucer in back. The one in the back, maybe there were 5 because I saw 2 grays going up the ramp. The ramp was facing that tree in my backyard. Their ramp was not facing me to where I could see inside their ship, but I saw them from their left sides as they went walking this way toward the street, up their ramp into their ship. And I watched them take off. And the bottom of their ship lit up in colors for a few seconds and then was gone. I wonder if these aliens, if they build their own craft and they're all different according to specs or things that they like. Maybe they have their own accoutrements inside where they have, depending on the colors, you can choose gray or silver gray. But I was sitting at the panel, and as I had my hands on the panel, like I show on the thumbnail, those symbols were to my right. They were going down the right, and it was like a little desk top. It's like, but it was black. But it was, it showed the animation for the field going around the craft. Now, I wasn't aware of what was spooling up, but let's see if there was maybe some element, like Bob Lazar talked about, like there was some type of liquid metal with a lot of surface tension, but able to move like mercury. And if that was spinning around in the diameter around the circumference of the ship, maybe, and it was speeding up. But somehow when you speed that up at a certain revolution, which can represent a pulse or a vibration or a wave, so if you set the revolutions to just the right frequency, and then you have to do something else with another power that you have to. I always think of the magic happens when you have some energy spooling up somewhere, but if you share the anode with another field that's going perpendicular to it, you can make magical things happen in the middle if they're both on different frequencies. I'm an economist, and I'm dangerous with physics because I've had enough physics homework as my math problems. I've had 600 level math, and a lot of the math that we use in economics is the same as physics. And I've had a lot, and I've taken chemistry, and I know elements and atomic mass and the anatomy of an atom. So far as I know what the 2-slit experiment is. I know how it's hard to find the location of an electron, but I think electrons are actually just wavepoint tangents to our reality. from, let's say, an electron is not a point, it's rather a sheet that represents a fabric, and where it touches on other fabric is depending on what is conjured by the forces. So anyway, so we get in the craft and we take off, and we went across the Gulf. We took off from Houston and we went across the Gulf, and we flew really fast, like he was saying. It must have been 5,000 or 6,000 miles an hour. And I've flown a lot commercially. I've probably flown over 5 million miles, closer to 6 million miles. I used to fly a lot. And I would say we were at about 60, 70,000 feet, going about maybe 2,000 miles an hour. And we went, I think it was South America, to the jungle. And I believe that that's where I saw a city. And it was in a place where nobody finds it. I think maybe it's at a different frequency itself, that city, or what we would call in a different dimension. Dimensions are all about vibration, speed, and frequency. And it had shiny, shiny buildings, but the tops were rounded. They weren't square topped like we have when we build skyscrapers or buildings. And they were just different looking. I could tell that that was not downtown Houston. I was only 6 years old, but I knew we lived in a place called Skyscraper Shadows. So if you can imagine, we could see downtown, basically from my front yard back in the day. I've driven back there. That was in the 60s. That was 1970. Can you imagine now, 50 something years later, what that part of town looks like in Houston? I don't drive down there that much. It's not that bad, but it's around. If you live in Houston, do you know where Alameda, Genoa is? And the what was that called? The Alameda Genoa Mall. I remember there was a store there called Foley's. Anyway, that was the area. We flew south across the Gulf and we went really fast. But then I remember seeing like a pretty forest and a meadow and that city. And then I think I might have seen something about people that were doing something wrong to people in wherever we went. Like maybe there were people in captivity. You know, have you ever heard of Plato's cave, where the person escapes from the cave and tries to come back and tell the people there's more to the world than just those shadows on the wall, those projections? You're being deceived by the projections on the wall of the shadows. Why don't you go outside and see the real world? It was kind of like that thing where, but with captivity involved, or slavery. Or these grays seem to be showing not only me, but other people they make contact with. Sometimes they're doing scientific experiments and probing, and you hear these terrible stories, but not with me. It seemed to be one of those where they're showing you something. They want to show you how to improve mankind, and they want to show us how to not destroy the earth, because they live on it too. They're not traveling here from Zeta Reticuli. They're, let's say maybe some one of them came from there a million years ago, who knows? But right now they live on Earth, just like we don't know our origin. Did we come out of a spacecraft that crashed here 11,500 years ago, and they started mixing their DNA with a species that they found here, like the Cro-Magnon human that made human? Those mainstream theories. That's about the same as you saying that a gray comes from Zeta Reticuli. Maybe a million years ago, or more than 12,500 years ago, or 11,000. But who knows? Right now they live, like I said, in hidden parts of the jungle in the Amazon. They live under the ocean in some places. And they live in canyons. They're finding new places in the Grand Canyon. and others. They live in, there are cliffs. That's where the giants hide as well, right? Like the red-haired giants that they found them in Arizona in the Amazon, but they're hidden and tucked away. They were given to the Smithsonian and never seen again. So back to my experience. We flew, then we came back. I remember I was back in the yard. The door was open. I was about to leave and exit the craft. And I remember the being showing me a wand. Looked like a remote, but it was round and flat in its shape, but kind of like a remote, but almost like a big fat cigar, but it had buttons on it. And I remember asking if I could take it to school to show and tell. And the being said, no, you cannot take it to school for show and tell. I was going to tell my class, look, the little guys came by last night. They were cool. They took me for a ride and they gave me this. Watch, I'll push this button. I could be, hey, that would be cool. I could be zapping people and taking their clothes off so that all the teachers would be naked and they would run away. To, get into all kinds of shenanigans with my fancy wand. But I think he had me push a button, and if I mix lore with the movie like Men in Black, maybe I forgot because of that. But I was thinking that for a while. But recently I've changed my mind. I don't think they made me forget anything. Somehow, though, I remember I'm looking this way. The doorway's right here. Here's the ramp. I'm at the top of the ramp. And the being is in front of me. We're both just halfway outside of the craft, standing at the top of the ramp with my back towards the street. And he said something. I remember he told me his name, and it was like Moo, M-U, or something like that. But it was, I don't remember exactly his name. He told me his name, and he told me, I don't remember if he said he would come back or something would happen in a number of years. But there was some information given to me that I don't remember. So the whole reason I forgot all of this was because my mother forbade us from talking about it. She was very adamant. I remember getting picked up from school the next day. And it was on a school night when that happened, by the way. And so I went straight to school the next day. And I remember I got up and asked the teacher if I could talk to the class. And I went up and I told my story. And I remember her just saying, all right, thank you very much. Please go take a seat. Can you imagine if you were the teacher and this kid saying, and these little men landed in my yard and they had these round, what would I have called them? I would not have known the word flying saucer. They had these, would I've said spacecraft? Who knows what I even called them? The ships. They had these ships and they landed in my yard and they wanted me to go fly with them, and they took me flying and I got to fly it and it was cool. And we saw this and this and this, and he told me this and his name was this. And I remember I gave a presentation to my whole class on this event. And if we can get all those people and question them, they'll verify that I told that. And I don't even think it was show and tell day. I just raised my hand and said, I've got a really neat story that happened last night I'd like to tell. So I changed the curriculum for the class that day for a moment. And my mother said, no, you didn't. But yeah, I did that. Let's see what else is in this interview right now.
I remember it was kind of a windy, breezy night too.
Warm.
And it was warm. Not sweaty warm, but it wasn't cold. And I remember walking out, and you were on my left, walking across the yard, because when I went up the ramp, you let go of my hand and you stood on the grass by the craft, but you did not go up in with me. Why did you not go up in?
I have no idea.
Maybe they were sending some kind of command, like, let the boy go, let him come in.
I don't know. Maybe I'd already been in.
Maybe you went in and flew off with them and came back or something.
That just rang a bell. Flew off with them. Think that happened.
With you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never thought about that before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what was the experience for you? I mean, I told you I had this dream when we figured out you were there with me, but actually it was your experience and I was with you as well. Well, the only difference in my recollection is I was inside the craft and you were not with me. You waited in the yard.
So it could be your experience, not mine.
But you were there. It's weird. How do you explain an alien fifth kind encounter when you can't remember all the details, but you share the same memory? Woo. So.
Did you ever tell Dad this?
No, I didn't remember this before he passed away. It was like a year or so afterward. It just started coming into my mind. I'm kind of afraid to talk about it because if I'm over there taking pictures today and now we're talking about it, I don't want them to come back. If they know,
it's true.
It's
You
true.
don't want them.
If they know telepathically I'm trying to dig up all these memories and you are too, then they might come back.
If these are big bad brothers, that would be bad.
Yeah.
It's the same people as we had before. That's okay.
Yeah, if it was the same guys as before. But what I remember, when I walked out, I went up into the craft. You stood on the left side of the ramp. I went up in, I turned right. There was the boss alien person was there to greet me, and there were two others, but I got the feeling that they were like deckhands. They were just two deckhands on the craft. Let me use this. They were like two deckhands, and they showed me screens. There were like flat screens, like an like a tablet. But those didn't exist in 69 or 70. I remember I was looking, I was in the... For us, for them it did. That's true, I never thought of that. Technology existed, we just didn't have the revelation of it.
Yeah.
I guess that's true for all technology that we don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in, I turned right, and I was looking towards the outer wall of the craft, which was much larger on the inside than it looks on the outside.
Okay, explain that.
I don't know, but it's like when you look from the outside, it was probably no bigger than 18 feet in diameter. But to me, I was a little kid, it seemed huge, but now I look and it was only like longer than a station wagon or, So.
But once you got inside, it extended the...
You were inside. Once you get inside, it's like there's rooms everywhere and halls going off, and I wonder if it's like a portal to another dimension and you're kind of halfway on the other side in their world or something.
Mm.
Blows your mind, doesn't it?
Well, it does.
But I remember they showed me screens. I don't think it was as much. I've had this idea that it wasn't as much as they were teaching me something, but they were getting my reaction to things. And they showed me things on screens, and I don't remember if it was violence or sexual or nature or science.
What if it was just for this thing you were doing right here, just so that you could go and tell them what you saw and what happened to you?
So I could share in the future what
Yeah.
happened to me, because they wanted me to share.
Yeah.
And I'm sure.
So anyway, you were
right
saying you were
now.
inside, and when you walked in, it extended.
You may have shared that with me because when you were telling me that you did this, I saw it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I saw going down a long hall. There wasn't a long hall there, but from the outside of it. But inside, there's a long hall.
Yeah. And I've heard in other alien abduction experiences, people talk about the craft being much larger on the inside. There's more rooms and hallways than you can imagine, and it's just much bigger on the inside. So how the experience
So I'll end it there. If you want to see some more of that, you can look that up on my channel. My Alien Fifth Kind Encounter, 3 graves with mom aboard in front yard, 1971, used to live with them. Yeah, so I was maybe six and a half, almost 7. So 3 graves with mom. Now I'm remembering more because I know I flew with 3 that I went up in the ramp with when she was holding my hand, she let go. But when we first came out the front door over here, we came out on the porch and we turned right and I looked and I saw the saucer closest to the ditch in the front street, and I saw another one further back in the middle of the east yard. And 2 beings were going up that ramp, and then I watched them take off. So I was left. My mother and I were left with the other 3. But the other 2 went inside the craft, so only the leader was standing out. No, I think the others were out there, and then they walked in to be inside before I got there. That's why my mother said at one point, is that where they were all standing in the yard? I did see that because I remember it now. It's weird how pieces fill in. But even the pieces that are filled in are choppy. It's not one fluid idea that just goes in like my mind made it up or anything. It's really like pulling slides. Mm-hmm. I wonder why I wasn't scared to death to be frozen, or I couldn't even move. just having crap my pants and everything just pissed on the floor and fainting or something. But instead, I just said, I won't come with you unless my mom comes. So they went and they woke up my mother. And like she said, she does not remember how she got to the front yard. But then I saw her from the window. This was my front window. She had just left the porch and was heading over here. And she walked right past my window, and I saw her go by. And that's when she held up her finger and she said, "I'll be right back." Reading her lips, and then that's when she got in that saucer, and then it lit up underneath with all the colors, and it took off. You know, when it came back, I think I missed. When it came back, I might have been laying on my bed and decided to get back up. Maybe I heard something. And I walked over to the window, and it was sitting there again, and she was getting out of it. But I wondered how long she was gone. She told me she waited forever for me in the yard. One time I talked to her about it at a different place, and she said that I waited for you forever. Was I gone 30 minutes or what? But so that's the event, guys. I was watching that report, and I had seen this show about aliens. There's our astronauts that came back. Like this.
According to Zoharic literature, there are
Some say they're terrible, horrid-looking beings that are super scary.
beings inside the Earth having large black eyes and a nose that leaves only 2 dark holes on the face. Now that corresponds to things that we've heard about these, for lack of a better word, ETs. There is a lot of evidence that these beings that we think are coming from another planet are not coming from another planet. They're coming from inside our own Earth.
Correct.
The black-eyed entities, commonly referred to as greys by ufologists, are the beings most often reported by alleged alien abductees, many of whom claim to have been taken aboard saucer-shaped craft. Could it be that the so-called flying saucers, so often reported in modern times, are not coming from outer space, but inner Earth?
Correct.
According to some ancient astronaut theorists, this notion is supported by numerous accounts of UFOs that are seen disappearing into the landscape, and sometimes even flying directly into mountains.
Yeah. Ancient aliens. So I completely agree with that. I think that they are flying from underground. They're in the ocean. They seem to come up out of the ocean a lot. And Antarctica and specific countries, where do they come out at? It seems like for some reason the United States, from the Grand Canyon to the West Coast, San Diego has that tunnel that's way under the ocean. But that's more of a submarine tunnel. But I think they live under the ocean. Maybe they can fly those craft if they're wrinkling time and matter. They just slip through it. It's not really that they slip through it; it slips over them. They're not really moving. It's just like everything slips around them to whatever they're thinking about or wherever they want to go. Once that spooling field is generated, then that's when you go. And so you could be talking about it right now, and I could say, okay, open your door. You're on Mars. No, no. Or I could say, open your door, and it's your neighbor's backyard. I could change something when we slip. Anyway, I'm just goofing around. That was it for basically what I wanted to talk about. They did not look that scary. Some of them look really menacing. These were more childlike. Their faces were more childlike. Not so, the angles were not so menacing with such a pointed. It's almost like I have trouble remembering if they actually had a solid black, big bulging eye like this, or if they had almost regular eyes like ours with eyelids and looked. Now, I'm not saying they blinked side to side like lizards. That lizards' eyelids will have two sets. I don't remember any weird eye things going on, but it's almost like they didn't just have those big bulbous things looking at me, but I actually saw moving eye parts. I think there are some beings like that have eyes that are more. No, I think it was the big black bulbous all the time. Scratch that. So that's my experience, guys. So I'm one of these people that until just 7 years ago, I was just like you, hearing stories with people like me, live streaming, saying that they just remembered or having flashbacks of certain scenes. Can't really remember the whole event, just pieces of it. And it corroborates with my mother. And the weird thing was when we were talking to each other, we were filling in details that the other one would not have known. And we were just filling in the holes as we were telling the story. And that was neat. But I think my mother said, we're never going to talk about this. You don't want to. It would not be good. And, what does she say? People will make fun and poke fun of you, and they won't believe you. And it'll just cause a lot of trouble. So she said, so let's not talk about it, okay? I said, okay, Mom. And then we never did. But I'm still wondering, how did I forget that so much? And it was a traumatic event emotionally, I bet, and mentally, because, hey, my whole paradigm changed in that one evening or that one night. So maybe was my mind traumatized enough by the overload of the fact that they're aliens and they came to me and they took me for a ride and I flew a craft and my mom's here. Let's go home. And you think about it again, like, what? But like I said, when I went and asked her, when I was a child, did I ever talk about them being my friends? And she just looked up and said, yeah, they were over in the East Yard. What other thing could she have said that would have made it not like we're telling the truth or that she wasn't there? I mean, it's just, it's wild. I wonder why I don't have a really good memory of it where I'm piecing together pieces of flashbacks. And one part sitting in the chair flying it that I remembered from the therapy session. And that's all I've got to go on. It does seem like over time, the thing begins to have more of a solidity to the story. But I don't want my mind to be filling it in with my own opinions and knowledge. I'd like to be, for my memory of it to be what it really was, or what we were. I want to know what we were talking about, because I don't remember the topic. When we were flying over there, we definitely went south, and we flew over. I know we went over the Gulf because we flew over an ocean pretty long. Then we hit land. And I know we were going south because my grandfather had a shipping boat, and we gone down to the water all the time. I knew Galveston. I knew some other beaches. And so I knew which way was south. And I know we hit land, and then after a while, a big jungle. I don't remember going to Antarctica. I don't remember going that far or seeing any ice scenes. I think I saw a dirty city, and they were comparing it to their city. And maybe it was a dirty city like Detroit or something in the morning with the smog blowing up into the sky through the morning sunrise. Some scene like that. But they were just trying to, I guess, expand my mind and broaden my mind, I guess, to where that. For my career, I traveled down there a lot in Latin America. And it just drew my attention. I learned Portuguese, and I started going to Brazil. And I even went to Brasilia. I went through the Brazilian embassy one day with a general, a 4-star general. He knew me, and he met me down there, and we went to his old job. And it's funny, when we got out of the taxi, everybody saluted him at the gate, and they opened the door, and we walked in, and everybody's like, "Hey, how you doing, General?" He's like, "It's okay, guys, relax." He showed me the prisms that they put inside of the glass to hear people's conversations over at the embassy across the very next building. They have all these buildings that are each country's embassy, but the American and the Russian embassy are right next to each other, and their windows face each other, so they shoot lasers that read the vibrations in the window, and they hear each other's conversations, and they would just insult each other and tell jokes about their mamas and stuff like that, he said. But yeah, that was fun. I was supposed to show this general around at this show that I was going to. I worked for a biologics company. And we just went to the show, looked at marketing, the marketing end of everything, how things were, what was being used in Brazil, and how the market worked, what the ads looked like. And you have to know like how the logistics part of it works, and how the bidding works, and what licenses you have to have, and which products you have to register and which ones you don't, which ones require an FDA full review of the dossier. And I would give them big binders I would mail out in packages. But anyway, my career turned out to cover that area a lot. So it influenced me, but I don't know why, other than just some positive things in my life, and then just a weird experience that is coming as just only pieces of flashbacks. But some of them have action in them. They're actually little video clips. But no one there yet. I see I'm getting very small number of views, but I hope this grows just because I'm being consistent on the algorithm, even if my chats are sounding boring and I'm not prepared. I was kind of busy today, and I always have an idea of what I'm going to talk about, though. So I hope you enjoyed my story. You'll probably hear it a lot on my channel. As I go along, I might refer to it as we change subjects. I would like to hear some topics from you. If you're in the room now or in the comments, please do. Please subscribe. and help me with the numbers, and I will be motivated to work more. I do this not because it's like work, but I'm a night owl, and I look around midnight to launch things that people who are up watching live do. You ever do that? Just go on YouTube sometimes at night when you can't sleep or if you don't want to, and just go to live. There's a guy named Jack Wolf. Shout out to him. He plays in a bar in Florida, and I think it's an outdoor open bar, and they play. He plays all kinds of music, a lot of whatever you would think, people in a Jimmy Buffett band would play, but he plays a lot more modern things as well. And some big songs that you wouldn't think could be played on just an acoustic, he's pretty good at. So I will sign off from here, guys. Thank you for watching the episode here. Bye. Oh, remember, let's finish with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for having us today to reflect on other beings that live with us on earth that apparently are real. They have good intentions for us. The ones that my mother and I met, but what are they doing to humanity? How can they help us change? Or are they even trying to? Or are they not allowed to? We're just trying to know. Nothing urgent, but we'd like to thank you for all that we've got and for your love. Thank you. Amen. All right. Bye. Love you guys.